Hey everybody, it's your pal Drew, and take two. Took about a half hour to do the first run of this, and but there was no sound. I can't figure out why. Computers are so wacky. There's that famous phrase: "Those who do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, is a definition of madness." Well, that is no longer applicable. You could have something mess up on your computer and you try it several times, doesn't work, and all you gotta do is reboot it and you're back in business. So computers put the lie to that after so many decades. Anyway, maybe there'll be an asterisk that'll say computers and it'll have my name on it. Okay, Alpha Flight. This was a really nice surprise because John Byrne was really getting red hot with the Fantastic Four. He had wild success with X-Men and with Chris Claremont, and Fantastic Four was really kind of just dragging along for a few years, and it went from like one of my top books on my stack of comics I would buy to the bottom. And Byrne came along, he was on top. So how did this come to be? It was a monthly book, and creator John Byrne did 27 or 28 issues of it for switching over the creative teams, switching books. Alpha Flight first appeared in X-Men number 120, and they were pretty popular. Guardian, who was back then called Vindicator, for lack of a better word at the time, he showed up in X-Men 109 trying to retrieve Wolverine for the Canadian government because Wolverine had the adamantium bones added to him from the Canadian government, so they considered him their property. So they fought, they showed up, they fought, and they went their separate ways. They didn't get Wolverine. But towards the end of Byrne's run, he had Wolverine and Nightcrawler go up to Canada, make peace with Vindicator, as well as Snowbird. It was a really great story. And you know what's weird? There's a guy I listened to about Beatles information. His name is Matt, and he does a show called Pop Goes the 60s. And he's temporarily not doing any episodes because he just lost his wife, which is a horrible thing, and he just wanted everybody to know that. He says, and I really love his shows, and I watch the old ones. He says, like the Beatles, he said they broke up at the right time in 1970, and I agree with that. And I feel Byrne left the X-Men at the right time because they had done Death of Phoenix, they had done, this with returning Wolverine resolving his issues with the Canadian government. Then they did the legendary Days of Future Past. Then they did a solo issue about Kitty sitting at the X-Mansion alone during the holidays fighting this demon. And it went out with a bang. It was great. Nobody really knew what issue was going to be. And then Dave Cockrum came back after a fill-in issue with, not a fill-in issue, but a Cyclops-centric one-shot issue with Brent Anderson. So Alpha Flight is co-created by Byrne and Claremont. Apparently there was some demand for an Alpha Flight series. And what's weird is usually that stuff sort of happens shortly after an appearance in a popular book, but this kind of stuck around for quite a while. The idea that there was no Alpha Flight comic, and then all of a sudden, John Byrne came up with it. Later years, he would say he kind of regretted doing it, and there's some parts I could see why he felt that way, but since he was a Canadian, he felt duty bound to do it, and maybe he heard somebody else was going to do it and he felt possessive of it, being that he co-created it. So we got Alpha Flight. Start off really strong. That is a beautiful first page for a new series. He's so small, and it's like you're looking from above. Nice framing sequence. It basically catches you up to date to where Alpha Flight was told to break up. Department H and Alpha Flight are being disbanded. This was in the X-Men. So he's just kind of, thinking, now what am I going to do with my life? Here comes Michael Two Young Men, who is Shaman. And here is Aurora, who is like this sex symbol, but she's a split personality. The other one is a very, very rigid, uptight teacher at a Catholic school. And here comes in a fancy new sports car, her twin brother, Jean-Paul, and he's a mutant. They're both mutants. He exploits his mutant powers by becoming a champion skier and getting, Olympic awards and such. So this sort of catches up on, and like I said, see how proper she looks, and he takes her hair down, and she passes out. It was a little too rigid. And here is Guardian's wife, Heather, who only appeared once before in X-Men. And what I like about it is she's just an average person. She's not like some tarted up sex pot, with like 9-foot legs and that kind of crap. She's just real relatable. She's a decent, supportive wife and more. Well, I knew Mac was upset when Trudeau pulled the plug on this, but I had no idea he'd done this. He senses that they're gonna need to get Alpha Flight to help with this problem, because I don't want my husband, the hero, to go to this on his lonesome. So as of now, you're all officially active. And there is a guy named Puck, who is a bouncer. And it's what's cool about Puck, first appearance of him, he's like Wolverine one step further. Wolverine was only 5 foot tall, and that's why he was just a scrapper, and the whole deception is that he was shorter than most people, but he could whoop anybody's ass. And this is Eugene Milton Judd. That's a great name. He jumps down, and this guy's a dwarf, and he takes out the troublemakers. The call at last. Ping ping. Like a lot of potential Alpha Flight people, he has something attached to the base of his skull or behind his ear that alerts people. He's like, the call at last. So he just, it's a great visual. And there's Marina, and I don't know if we've seen her before. I love that sweater, that texture. Here comes Sasquatch, and beautiful Snowbird, this elemental creature, comes up. I like that he's black and white. A lot of times, especially when people do hair, they will do blue, and that's something Byrne does a lot. You'll find out later. Like with U.S. Agent, he makes his costume in Avengers black and white, no blue. Because I grew up seeing men and women that were brunettes being bluettes, and it always struck me as weird. So now that Aurora is her other self, she's like, la 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 la. That's great. I love that. So he lets himself in. Good old Puck. He's a cool pucker. So these monsters just take out. There's Shaman. All these designs are just fantastic. So here comes from a helicopter. I just picture like da 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 da. I picture this really cool music when he jumps down, like welcome to the jungle. Oh, well, it's not jungle, but yeah, he starts tearing apart pieces of tundra, and everybody gets involved. Snowbird, Shaman brings the rain, makes it rain, and it dissolves just like that. So the team's all in there, and some people decide they're going to be a team. He doesn't want to be in a team, but his sister Sister Jean Marie. Hey, Judd, don't tell me Heather, you got Heather's call too. Why not, eh? I was ready for the first team, wasn't I? Because we got to change the name. Hey, I busted my buns to be Alpha Flight. I want to be an Alpha Flight. This was Walter Lankowski, a.k.a. Sasquatch. Relax, short, bald, and nasty. Alpha Flight sounds good to me, too, but we could always use a mascot. Mascot! He starts kicking his ass. Okay, issue 2. Beginning the mystery of Marina. Lots of stuff going on. Now, you notice in a lot of these pages, you'll see light backgrounds or not many, but I don't care because his storytelling is so demanding that if you were to have backgrounds here, it would really make a mess. So sometimes you just have to hold your breath and, hey, what's with that goofy mustache? Oh, well, here is the Master. And what's great, at this point, there's like these 5-page backup stories that with the kind of classic stuff from the 60s telling the origins of various members of Alpha Flight. I love that. And he's still not, vindicated yet. He stole the battle suit that he wanted because they wanted to make it into a national weapon or, for the military. Man, I love those stark black and white covers. Like I said, this is a very light on detail, but it doesn't need it. It's great storytelling, and she has a lot to think about to share with the reader. And it's not that bad. I don't mean to sound like it's dismissive. Wow. That's a lot of work right there with those rods everywhere. And there's so much going on. And this crosses over with Fantastic Four as she reunites with Namor, not romantically, but they both know they have to go. I don't know how they show up. They know about the Master somehow. And here we go, backdrop storyline of Guardian. Nice little pinup. Rip. I love that Byrne did a lot of different FF uniforms to suit the needs. I think this sort of thing was, I actually believe, like Mike Barron on the Badger with, what's his name? He's so good. I can't think of his name. But they would have Badger's costume. Oh, Bill Reinhold. They would have Badger's costume adjusted for like camouflage, for the snow, all kinds of stuff. Now the stories are kind of dry. Like it's not a lot of cool stuff, but I can't quite describe it. It was great as a monthly book, but binging it is just not that. It's good to read if you have a collection like this. Read one issue at a time or two. I like that hairy logo. Puck. So he's recovering from wounds, and he discovers stuff going on. He makes it all work. And here is part of the origin of Shaman. And here's the infamous issue that so many fans railed against. They still bought Alpha Flight, but they were pissed off. Snowblind. Beautiful cover. And what's interesting is you don't see her a lot in her civilian identity. She is actually like an elemental that's connected. Her essence, her body is attached to the Canadian North. The whatever the elements are, not just the elements. She's in touch with like the Earth, but specifically Canadian area. And I forgot that she had a civilian identity until now. And what I like is Byrne draws her like an average person. She doesn't have the big, nice, sexy, legs and butt, and she doesn't have a big chest. She's just a very normal person, just like anybody else, and it's not like the Image years where you had to make every woman look like a pinup from Playboy. So she becomes Snowbird. Another great design. Well, they get fight, and here we go. It whips around her like a living thing, a blizzard thicker and colder than any in living memory. And even this child of the gods is taken unawares. Curse me for a novice. She should pay Dr. Strange for saying that. That's his tag. Colomark commands forces of nature. He is a living embodiment of winter, but he is vulnerable. Now, people had such a shit fit over this. And the thing is, I could actually tell that Byrne put a lot of thought into where the characters would be placed. I mean, like that, it's just fun there, but I dig it. I totally dig it. And I know it went on for several pages, but the script was good enough that you knew stuff was going on, and it was brilliant. This is the kind of stuff. What's funny is I don't know. I was too young to be working with Jim Shooter at Marvel, way too young, and I've always wondered how Shooter played favorites. Okay, Byrne, Miller, later on Walt Simonson, and Bill Sienkiewicz, definitely, where they could really stretch out and do audacious stuff like that. And then there were the monthly guys who, they were solid, they just weren't superstars, fan favorites, and he kind of busted their chops a lot. Chops is because I want to say something more severe. He would stick them into a 6-panel grid with all the images being mid-range, like just really awful. And but he let Byrne do whatever he wanted, and that was kind of cool until he wasn't. So more background. This sucks. This is a shitty issue. I like the idea of covering this, but Byrne said in an interview in Marvel Age, which is Marvel's house organ, or as they call it, in-house fanzine, kind of like Foom was in the mid-70s, that he was going to do individual characters and have them have their own adventures, and they would meet up again every year at the end of the year with like issue 12 or 24, and it just wasn't like, it was less than riveting, let me put it that way. There's Snowbird's story along with Shaman. That cover, can you think of a more boring cover? I'm stumped. So more of this. Pretty cool character there. Goes on and on and on. Even for the background's just really, there's so much going on here. Byrne's storytelling has always been top notch. And there's that Marvel Age, and he mentioned that he didn't really want to do the book, but he said he wanted to do it just because he didn't want anybody else doing it. They were Canadians. Byrne was a Canadian, so he just felt obliged to do this, and he felt like he never succeeded. And the second half of the first year was really awful. And I could see why he would be disgruntled about it. There we go. Look at his big old mitts there. Okay. Walter and his associates are studying something or somewhat. And here comes the Thing. Now, the sharper-eyed members of this viewing audience, God, I sound like a dork. I sound like Ed Sullivan. You'll notice that the Thing, the rendering, is smoother. It's Joe Sinnott. What happened is Byrne asked Sinnott to do the Thing, which he would do many years later in X-Men: The Hidden Years, which was great. Oh, I love that effect. That's what you use. This is all pre-computers. You would use like a razor blade and actually scratch the image there, and then you could always add that on later. The Super Skrull. Hot diggity do. One of the coolest villains. Look at that. That's amazing stuff. And meanwhile, Blood Battle. Really, really great stuff. So, to save the life of the woman he loves, he must face them. Okay, great. Another great character. Byrne's really on fire here. There's a paraplegic superhero, which I don't recall they had any of them prior to 1983 when this came out. And I love the information here. He has a tabouret, which was one of those things you put next to your table to pull out your information. Put all your triangles and stuff on there, your art supplies. But those things cost a ton of money. And you could just get a little desk, a corner, like a bedroom nightstand, and put it next to you. Screw that. But they sold those for a lot of money. And I love that old-fashioned heater there. I had an apartment that had one of those things many, many years ago. So this woman is talking to him about... let me tell what she says. Oh, don't take too long, Mr. Box. The fire of vengeance dwindle with too much contemplation. So she wants revenge on Alpha Flight for whatever reason. Got her informed guardian. She leaves a message. He does. And he's looking. It's up to you and I, old friend. And it's an armored character named Box, B-O-X, as opposed to the same as his last name, just spelled different. This is a backstory of Sasquatch. Double-size issue. Somebody's gonna die. I also like this dead air here. And most artists couldn't really pull that off, but it's a neat trick. It's not something you can do all the time. And Sasquatch. Oh, he starts to get like real feral after a point. He turns into a monster, and they calm his ass down. Well, now he's taking on Omega Flight, which is really some badass characters that were like third stringers for Alpha Flight, including Box. Love that design. Really great characters. Whoop. So what's left is Box versus Guardian, and who was originally called Vindicator. And it turns out that Jackson, the villain who wanted to steal the technology, is trying to kill Max so he can get the armor. Although he has Box armor right now, but he just knows that there's a lot more that can be done. And also Jackson lost his job, I think, because of Guardian. Well, gotta tear out some circuits. Just wait for the right moment. Now, I really enjoy that. I really enjoy that little details there. Most of his circuits are fried, but he says, right now, however, I'd better disconnect my power pack. The suit's taking such a pounding, it'll blow any second if I don't cut it loose. I got about 10 seconds. It's hard to do this, and the panels say, whoa. Come on, everybody. All right, fall in. Here we go. Focus. And I can wait here all day, camera. Good Lord. Okay, there we go. And it's countdown, and he's almost ready. But Heather steps in with there's Heather, no, don't come in here. Whew, that is vicious. Mac, it just was a nightmarish situation with the worst kind of timing. Okay, Wolverine. And what's great about this, some wordless pages, and you would say, oh man, Byrne's cheating again, but I think it's really clever, and I know I'm making excuses for him, but this is when he was at his prime. It turned out that the phone rang. That's what happened. The phone rang, everybody. Sorry for the delay there. Well, not delay, but the sudden break. Always cool to see tombstones with the credits on it. First handful of pages, like half the book, have no words. But I mean, if you've ever experienced the loss of a loved one, that's our little 9-pound Shih Tzu poodle mix in the background, tearing away at this ball. she's ferocious. She's 10 years old, and you can hear her. She sounds crazed, but she's good. She's a good poo. Okay. So what's interesting, if you're experiencing such a horrible nightmare tragedy like that, or even any funeral, that's so great. You could go through an era where, I mean, a point where you don't hear a thing. You just hear like the usual, like, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss, la 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 la. Oh, he was so young, that kind of stuff, and it won't hit you. But we find it was a nightmare. I'm not big on nightmare sequences, but this one is really well done. Our ferocious little pup. She likes this is so she decides that she's not beaten yet. She still wants to have alpha flight. She's with Puck, biology class. Yeah, our little dog Skills. She gets a hold of this rope toy with a ball in the middle, and she whips it back and forth like ferocious. So Heather's, she's gradually, getting over. I don't want to say getting over Mac. That's kind of a insensitive thing to say. That's really cool costume. Here's Snowbird. It's real spectacular art. There he is again, the master of the world. I like how, let's face it, no peripheral vision. Wouldn't know who's coming from behind. You could boil some like hot tea and put it in there and watch him just surrender and go, yike. Or something equally annoying like I just did. I like that fish ship. Fish ship. So there's Mr. Box again. I took off that helmet. You know what that reminds me of is I remember in Guardians of the Galaxy 3 when they took the mask off the High Evolutionary. That was really cool. And this is pretty cool too. I'm not saying either were similarly inspired. It's just kind of neat. House ad from other comics at the time. Guardian is Dead, who will lead Alpha Flight. Smart. It's a smart ad there. What we do is we get X-Men 109, first time we see anything about Wolverine's origins, where it goes back to Canada and he wants to retrieve him to the Canadian government because of the adamantium stuff that I had mentioned. But it's like half the book has that reprint and the other half shows the Canadian half, the Alpha Flight half of Vindicator. Really cool stuff. I reviewed this the other day. And there's new pages, new panels. There's been adjustments. She's looking at the superhero suit, but she's not wearing it. She's just kind of... And that hair and the colors. Man. That is so gruesome. Good stuff. Good stuff. I really recommend this. Talisman. Oy, oy, oy. Such a boring character. She's Shaman's daughter. For years, she blamed her father for the mother's death. And she's basically, another version. But that costume is so... Yawn. Oh, boy. I mean, if you did a solo book like that... this is when I was kind of getting into, or kind of losing a little bit of faith in him. Where I'm this is kind of dull. I mean, at least give her a better costume. gruesome. And this is Bob Wyacek on the inks now. And then we get the reprint of the original X-Men issue, when you can see where it separates into the Alpha. I'm not saying separate. Give me a second. I want to show you something. Working on it. But I do recommend this book. It's fun. Because, you know what? There's a lot of comics that are crappy. And, people say, they are crappy. And I agree. I say it all the time. But you can always go back and see, like, classics that you hadn't thought of doing Alpha Flight. Picking it up. Working on it. Oh, you just waste. Screw it. There's one end page here where it says, and welcoming a new inker. And I was like, wow, they haven't done that in forever. So, good stuff. And there is an omni of these 3 books. I'm not going to double dip and get another one because I got these. I'm happy. And they're on decent paper. It's not shiny, happy paper. This came out about 10 years ago, I think, these 3 volumes. Ugh. Gilded Lily. Try to forget her. Let me tell you something. I had these issues when they came out. I saw this cover, and I was loving Alpha Flight, and I was like, oh, jeez, another filler. And the funny thing is, every time I open or revisit this era, I'm like, oh yeah, Gilded Lily. I forgot her. Try to forget her. I don't know. It was a little. How about that? Wow. Keith Williams actually is doing background inks, and he's doing some amazing stuff. So a little bit of clearing there. Amazing costume by Aurora. Now that is a great costume. Talisman's costume was awful, but that is so smart. That's a smart outfit. And I think it would fit with any era almost. I mean, like the last 40 years or so. She got her hair cut different. So she's very stylish. And she is Aurora. She's not the mousy woman she had in her other personality. It was Walter Lankowski. A little bit of this stuff. That's all right. As long as it doesn't go along too long. There is. So boring. Walter's turned gold thanks to Diablo. This kills me how beautiful this is. So much fun. And I really like the lines on the top of the sweater she's wearing. Like the little tiny, don't know what you call it, fringe, I guess. Really smart stuff. So, it is a good story too. And you got Diablo, classic character. We get some really great stuff. Oh. Hang on. Here is another character, Pink Pearl. For those who don't remember, if they still even make them, Pink Pearl is the name of an eraser. I don't have one on me handy, but it was just old-fashioned eraser. So he decided he'd make Pink Pearl. This is Box's redesign. I love it. Look how beautiful that is. That helmet and the proportions. So this is what happens when Roger Box steps out of Box. And he, scoots down to his chair. And like this is another, Pink Pearl. These fights too. Who cares? Who cares? This design I love, and what's great is, much like his contemporary George Perez, they would make these armored foes or robots that would only show up once and never again, and that's a lot going on there. I'd mentioned in a previous episode that George Perez created the Eliminator for the Fantastic Four on issue 184. Fantastic. Never showed up again. So it was just, hey, here's a fantastic looking robot thing. Well, Sasquatch is going wild, so Snowbird turns into Sasquatch. And they're squatching each other around. Ah, I love this. Just black and white there. That's storytelling. Incorporating the lack of color is excellent. Wow. I'm sure the colors love that one. Only one body to color, but I don't care. It's so wonderful. It's so ornate. Keith Williams really killing it. And I mean, Byrne drew it all, but Keith Williams gave it nice depth, because the wrong inker can make the background compete too much with the foreground. So hats off to him. I've always wanted to ink Byrne, but never had the chance. I like to ink him in recent years, since his inking has kind of gotten less than great. That is really cool there. Photostat. Don't care. It looks good. Then another one. There's no background, but it tells you what you want to know right there. Bam. Spotlight on North Star. He's sort of going through a trial of something he did wrong. Not a court-martial, but he's even more arrogant than Quicksilver, if that's possible. So, Guardian is back. And she's like, what happened? He kisses her right away. She passes out, which is understandable. And he tells the story about, he met these blobular things. I would bet you that maybe Frank Miller was looking at some of this for Ronin, a 6-issue miniseries he did for DC, which was really cool. But he did this kind of tech that actually was built around a quadriplegic character, the main character in the book, to give him limbs and stuff. And then he also showed a lot of organic tech, sort of like nanotech, just more organic looking. So, see, Heather? Got my armpit fixed and everything. There, Walter Lankowski, aka Sasquatch, he had died, but his spirit was still around, so he managed to incorporate him into Box. So now he's, a repository for Walter Lankowski, and Box is warning him. Oh, goodness. Well, at the end, not the end. I needed a drink. They had been lovers, and he says, well, hey, it's still me in here. After all, you love me for my mind, don't you? Don't you? Oh, there's something I have to think about. Aurora! So he's really upset, understandably. So, comes Alpha Flight with some more cool characters, and they combine into one big robot, like Transformers. Transformers have been out already, but I love that. Byrne's having fun with that. So he takes his mask off to Heather, does the old skin peel thing, and it turns out that it is a robot, an android, synthezoid, something or other zoid. In the back of my mind, I thought it was a little too convenient that he would be returned, but didn't expect that to happen that way. I love that. Opens this sack. What is this thing called? It's bigger on the inside and on the outside, and like they use in Doctor Who with the TARDIS, I think, some other things. Well, leave a mention it below, please. Hold on a second. I got a tickle in my throat. Hang on. So this technology wave is just engulfing everybody. Really cool stuff. Really, really imaginative. For someone who claims they didn't like doing Alpha Flight, There's a lot of TLC in this. Our friend the Beyonder. Well, this is something that is, I don't know how many times it's been done, but not many. It's the only one I can remember. A brilliant move. Byrne sort of told all the tales of Alpha Flight that he wanted to, got out of his system, and Bill Mantlo, who had written the Hulk from issue 245 until 313, he sort of felt the same way, and somehow somebody contacted someone, and they were going to switch creative teams across Alpha Flight and Hulk. Lots of stuff going on there. And what happens is Walter Lankowski wants to get out of the box robot, and he wants to have his own life back, and he find a body that would be suitable, because I've already hooked on the target. The gadget isn't designed to let go once it's latched on, only to reel him in, so it's like fishing into another dimension. And Box decides to jump in there and help out. And they say it's big, it's humanoid, and it's got almost no brainwave. Perfect for what Lankowski needs. And it's the Hulk, who had been banished to the crossroads in another dimension for a year. And there you get the letters page. I almost said email. I love this hand. I love that face. When Byrne took over Hulk, though, he didn't really stick to that look. He stuck to that look. And I would have loved if he'd gone back to being more Kirby. Ken Stacy from an issue of Marvel Fanfare. This is the last issue by Mantlo and Mike Mignola, who did quite a few issues. And he's inked by Gary Talek. Amazing difference. And although I love Mike Mignola's later stuff where it was like harsh graphics, black and white, I really miss the rendery style. That's really sweet stuff. So, then you see the opposite side. And here we go. This is Mignola, inked by Bob Wyacek. And as I was mentioning before, Mignola, he does that hard black and white style, but I kind of like the rendery style too from back. I'd love to see him revisit that. He did it. It was done to great effect in the Doctor Doom, Doctor Strange Marvel graphic novel that was inked by Mark Badger, who's a great artist in his own right. So now it kind of turns into like every superhero book where they exclaim all the stuff they're doing, and that's really great there. And it is fun. I picked up a couple issues after this, and it's okay, but it's very wordy. To an absurd level. There's wordy where it's necessary, and then there's wordy just to be a Marvel comic. And big old box takes on La Hulk. Okay, here's the panel that makes me cuckoo. It made me say, like, well, I'm not going to follow this book now that they've changed creators. Box falling apart by the Hulk. A piece be here, a piece be there. Well, that's me all over, Puck says. Box is being torn apart and laughing about it. Is he insane, or does he embody the spirit of the new Alpha Flight? What? Who talks like that? Who thinks like that? It just struck me as incredibly absurd. And that'd be like something you would bring up later, not in the middle of a battle. But they decide to stay together. Yes. And that's the end of the classic Alpha Flight. But people must have loved it because they knock in their cameras and screw up their YouTube channels. Not because this book lasted like 130 issues. That's more than 10 years long. And it went through a lot of creative teams, had a bit of a stumble, and then it came back. and then a young Jim Lee took over, and you wouldn't recognize as much because it's very raw and compact, little tiny figures, because it's a team book. And later on, when he did X-Men, he figured out how to do a team book, etc. And then Pat Broderick did like a year, and then there's the famous one where that made all the headlines by Mark Paciella or something like that, where North Star reveals his secret to the world. So anyway, these are great. It's an omnibus that comes out, but you can just get these fairly easy, probably on eBay, or maybe your local comic store is well stocked with old trade paperbacks. I love seeing that kind of stuff in the wild. So that's about it. And everybody have a great day.